So welcome everybody. For yous that don't know me, I'm Gerald Neal from Dynamic Creations Transformational Coaching, and this is a series of live Zoom talks that we're doing, bringing in various speakers to talk primarily around spirituality and personal development. And personal development in this one, where we've invited the fantastic, world-renowned ACES speaker, Iain Smith. Hi Iain, so Iain's a criminal defence lawyer, and we're really looking forward to this. So in this form we're looking at personal development. What are the factors, particularly early childhood factors, that hinder somebody developing into a stable, productive member of their communities? And often we find that, and Iain will go into that, I'm sure his experience, and often we find that traumatic encoded experiences that happen in the early parts of life have a massive hindrance on brain development, but also on people's ability to form proper relationships, substance misuse, mental and physical health, access criminal justice systems, a whole range of issues. And just before we start here, Iain has asked that we share a very short video which is open, it's on YouTube, about adverse childhood experiences. It's on the NHS website, and I will just share the screen with that just now and we will get going. So bear with us. We're here. Let's just make this a bit bigger. And go back. There we go.
Did you know that what happens to me as a child has a huge impact on the rest of my life? Some children grow up in a supportive, happy environment where positive relationships can make them feel safe. Others grow up facing difficulties which can have a long-lasting negative impact, even affecting what kind of adult they'll become and what health conditions they'll have in the future. These stressful events in childhood are called adverse childhood experiences, known as ACEs. ACEs was first identified in America after a study found as the number of stressful events as a child increased, so did the risk of experiencing a range of health conditions when you're grown up. These stressful experiences in childhood include different forms of abuse, physical and emotional neglect, and things that can happen to your family, like domestic violence, adults with alcohol or drug problems, parents splitting up, having a mum or dad with a mental illness, or having someone from the house in prison. But how does this affect me when I grow up? Well, the more ACEs I have now, the more risk I'll be affected when I am an adult. If I have 4 or more ACEs, I'm more likely as an adult to suffer from heart disease, develop type 2 diabetes, be in prison, have committed violence, or do things that are bad for my health, like smoking, drinking, and taking drugs. There are also other things which can have similar long-lasting effects on my health, such as bullying, losing a parent, not having a home, and being poor. In Scotland, 260,000 children are living in relative poverty, and out of those 7 out of 10 children living in poverty are in families where at least one adult is working. After you're grown up, not all work is good for your health, and being in work doesn't always mean you're not poor. A study in England found that people who have experienced 4 or more ACEs were 3 times more likely to live in the most deprived areas. So inequalities matter. Please help me and others like me. There are things you can do to help prevent ACEs. Talk about them. The more people know about ACEs, the more they can think about them in everything they do. If you work with children, have a think about whether they are experiencing an ACE and what impact it might have on them. Chances are you might have experienced an ACE, maybe more than one. What impact has it had on your life? Was there anyone you could speak to about it? Research has said that having an adult that you can trust and speak to could help stop the negative effects of ACEs. If you work with grown-ups in services such as homelessness, addiction or prison services, think about the impact of ACEs on them and what impact it might have on their children or kids they might have in the future. If you work in a school, think about how your work can help support children experiencing ACEs and what can be done to prevent them. Are there other people outside your own work that can help us combat ACEs? Can you work with other people to help prevent them? Please help Scotland be the best place to grow up. People like me shouldn't have to suffer, so what are you going to do about it?
And I found that quite emotional, actually. So thanks for allowing us to share that, Iain. It's the first time that I've seen it. We're going to go to Natalie, but just as a caveat, I think this says today does trigger anybody, and it brings back the stressing emotions, and you start experiencing sensations in your body associated with stress response switching on. It may be better to talk to a mental health professional. If that's not available on my YouTube channel, Gerald Neal YouTube, there is a series of videos, deep abdominal breathing. It's good for treating symptoms associated with the stress response being switched on. There's also a video, heart coherence, is good for changing the chemistry, the neurochemistry, and also a hearing technique, which is very good for depotentiation. So if any of that is just as a caveat, anything's triggered today, then go check those videos out and self-regulate slightly. Just now I'm going to get my big inspiration, Natalie, who's a brilliant person. Natalie, can you unmute yourself and read that poem, please?
Yep. Morning, guys. This is a poem that was written by my dad 35 years ago before he took his own life in prison. He died a heroin addict. A judge sits by in his favourite chair, handing out so much despair, judging people he hardly knows, in total confusion a good life he throws. One mistake and you're doomed for life, leaving your children, leaving your wife. Never a chance for justice to see the person I am, the good man in me. My freedom is gone for 22 years, hiding in darkness, hiding in fears. I beg for the light to come set me free. Come see the man, the good man in me.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Thanks for doing that. And it's over to you, Iain.
Okay. So firstly, thanks everyone for coming along to hear me speak. Just so you're aware, this is, although my day job is a criminal lawyer, I absolutely hate doing this. But I've got to force myself into doing this because nobody else is, in terms of my world, my job. Jed's going to give you, after the talk, he's going to send you all effectively an ACEs pack, which I've prepared, which has got some brilliant speakers on it. I'll obviously add Joe Berry's joined us today. Joe Berry's a wonderful speaker, has a brilliant story to tell about empathy, so I'll add her talk on it as well. So firstly, to thank Gerald for letting me speak, and for all of you for coming, and obviously now Natalie, having done that poem Cisco, which I'd read yesterday, a beautiful poem regarding hidden voices, and you'll see it from Natalie's Twitter page, and also Jerry from First Time Inside. They're doing a lot of good work with people in Barlinnie and elsewhere, and well worth a watch. What I was going to do firstly was, so you remembered who I was, and to maybe stress something I was going to gift and bring along a brick and show you a brick, and to explain to you that I was bricking it, so as a symbol, rather than maybe saying I was shitting myself and bringing another symbol. But rather than doing that, I had another little event to tell you about this morning, which was, I'm not very good with Zoom. So I got a text from Jed when I was sitting on the toilet, and I pressed the text, and suddenly I found myself in a Zoom call with Jed, who was checking if the Zoom worked okay, and I didn't know what it was, but I very quickly got rid of the video and pretended I was in my bed. But Jed saw me on the throne. So the reason I'm telling you that is to explain and I guess put myself in front of you that I'm vulnerable. So I don't like doing this sort of stuff. It's not to get sympathy, it's just that's my self-regulation is such that I don't like doing this. So this might be a wee bit wandered, a bit odd, but this is a sort of journey that I've been on over the past just over 2 years. So what happened to me was in November 2017, I met a lady called Leslie Udwin. You won't have heard of her, and yet in 2015, she was described by the New York Times Magazine as the third most impactful woman in the planet. In fact, second most impactful woman, and the only person that was in front of her was Hillary Clinton. And she created a BAFTA-winning film called East is East, and I run a little cinema. My pal said, "You've got to meet this woman," and suddenly, before I know it, she's showing her film called India's Daughter, and she'd created a charity called Think Equal, which relates to bringing in social emotional learning to early years education. And that's really with the view to providing children with tools at a very early age, even if there's adversity in their life, for their future to understand about equality, misogyny, empathy, and lots of brilliant tools that if you've got it when you're very young, these may stick with you, even if there's shit happening with you. Sorry, I should have put a caveat warning. I swear a lot of notes, there's a lot of little kids there. So my pal Rachel, who's come on, she's got her headphones on so that I can't be heard. So I'll try and avoid swearing, but just a wee caveat. But she has this charity, and suddenly she was asking me, as a wee guy that runs a free cinema, not as a lawyer or anything like that, to get her to meet people. And during that time, I met people like Karen McCluskey and John Carnican, and they introduced me to others, including the late and brilliant Tina Henry, who I saw at Wester Hales for a screening of Resilience. And if you've not seen that film, it's a brilliant film. Features Dr. Nadine Burke-Harrison, talks about the ACEs study from '98 for Ander and Felitti. And I'm not going to talk to you about the science of that. That was why I showed you the little video, because obviously I'm a lawyer, I'm not a psychologist. And I don't really, as much as I understand the science, I don't want to lecture to you about that. But what I do want to bring to you is what that knowledge has given me, what I've done before and what I do now, and the difference. It had a massive impact. When I met Tina that day, she sees some wee smart arse lawyer, wee sports jacket on, thinking he's cool. And she says to me, "What's in this for you?" And it completely caught me off guard. And she's quite a strong woman, or was a very strong woman, big personality, and I totally crapped it and said, "Oh," which is the truth, which was, "I just want to help people." And she wasn't very sure, but she nurtured me, looked after me, and really has changed my life, in part with other people, lots of brilliant people. And what I used to see and what I used to get involved with, I was always wanting to help people, so that's not really changed. But it's really what I want to tell you about is what I've done with this knowledge. So a wee quote to begin with, which was out in Craig Miller Books on Twitter this week from a guy called Stuart Shanker. I have to be careful how I say his second name. Stuart Shanker says, "When you see a child differently, you see a different child." And using effectively the ACEs lens now for me with my clients, I now see clients differently, and now seeing a different client with that knowledge. It's like the scales have literally fallen off my eyes, and I'm seeing something I've never seen before. So I'm almost now 27 years into being a lawyer. I'd studied for 5 years before that, so it's a long time of my life thinking about dealing with people in the criminal justice system. And I never ever thought that people were bad, that they just did bad things. And I never saw junkies, jakies, Neds. I never saw that. I always saw people. What I didn't see, and this is a big reveal for me, was I never saw the massive damage caused to people through early years adversity, childhood trauma. And because I now know that, I'm very passionate about telling other people about it, but I'm now aware of the catastrophic impact that has on people's ability to self-regulate, their inability to trust people, rejection of authority, and how a lot of people self-soothe on heroin and alcohol. So that's their solution. And people say, "Oh, there's a problem with drugs, there's a problem with alcohol." that's not really the problem. That's their solution. The problem's more fundamental than that, and I'll come on to that. What it made me do was suddenly get involved in areas I never thought I ever would. So I was suddenly chatting about this just to my pals, and they're thinking I'm a bit mad. I started writing about it. I wrote, I'm dyslexic, just as a wee reveal. So writing and reading it, despite my law degree, isn't my strong point. I forced myself to write an article with Dr. Suzanne Zedijk, and then I wrote another one about it, and telling the 11,000 lawyers all about adverse childhood experiences and the biological impact of childhood trauma on the developing brain. And I thought, well, that's got a couple of articles about it. Everybody knows about it now. My job is done. And of course, it was far from done because, well, for various reasons I'll come on to, but there's an ongoing journey, and there's been a lot of good things, and I'll tell you about those as well. It got me on social media. It got me going into the prisons with brilliant people like Kim McGuigan, the Violence Reduction Unit, and just telling the young people in prison about what I'd discovered and what I'd learned, and why it was important. And there was the first time I went to any prison, I went to Kilmarnock prison with Tina Henry and Kevin Neary, and we showed them the film Resilience, and I said, right, when are you going to show the inmates this, because this is huge? Oh no, we can't show the inmates because they'll all kill themselves if they see this. And I had to point out, of course, the very people that are living this may well not know about the science, but they'll certainly know about their adversities. So they're not going to kill themselves knowing that they were sexually abused and that's had an impact. If anything, it would be a comfort to them, thinking, you mean I'm no bad? You mean someone's done something really bad to me, and that's caused my regulation system to be very poor. I'm looking to take heroin when I'm 13 or 14 to take away the pain, so I'm not going to have any joy in my life. I'd rather just take away the pain. And it becomes an understanding. So for me, it's a big deal. It's very well telling all the professionals, social workers, the judges, about adverse childhood experiences and the science. But for me, and albeit as Jed's warning at the beginning of this talk is about triggers and it can cause upset, I get all that. But I don't think people are unaware of the trauma in their childhood. Some of it is obviously can be blocked or lived with, but it's obviously there. I guess one of the other caveats for you is that not everyone who has childhood trauma ends up in my world in the criminal justice system. So that's a given. And also, which is also important, not everyone in the criminal justice system has adverse childhood experiences. People commit crimes because they're greedy, they're daft, they get pissed with their young pals and try and be a bit brave. It's not all about adverse childhood experiences. So I don't talk about this in court, but for every single case, but I can identify cases where it's relevant. I've met loads and loads of different organisations. I've met government groups. I'm part of the West Lothian ACEs Hub. I know that Fiona Jenkins was going to try and come on this talk. I don't know if she's here, but she, along with Lisa Marie Purdy, created the West Lothian ACEs group, which I'm proud to be part of. And we go along with talking to educators, talking to health professionals, and talking to people in the justice system about adverse childhood experiences. And I'm a trustee aid and abet, where they do wonderful work in prisons, a little bit like Cisco, First Time Inside, and all the other Jerry Diamond and various other groups and organisations who do brilliant jobs in prisons. And I'm just there to oversee it, rather than, you know, I'm not going to pretend I've got lived experience. We all have lived experience, but I'm not a lived experience mentor. I don't say to my clients, I can tell you all about adverse childhood experiences because I've walked in your shoes. I never do that, but it's important that I know about it. So since I've been talking about it, the big thing I've noticed is that there has been very little change. First thing is there's a knowledge gap. So for judges, lawyers, prosecutors, social work, and social work is a big surprise because we'll come on to that again about the early years. Children's and families team know all about adverse childhood experiences, and yet take it into the criminal justice system and something seems to be missing. So there's a big gap in knowledge, so we have to keep talking about this stuff. But once they have this knowledge, there's a resistance to change. So in particular with judges, they're set in their ways. They don't want to know about this, they don't want to change. So that is a problem. Judges, again, maybe view it that this is seen as an excuse. So there's the wee lawyer in court telling, no, it's a wee shame for his client, and all these bad things happen to him, boo-hoo, didn't give him the jail. So for me, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. So it doesn't say it's okay to commit crime, but it's me saying to the judge, here, this wee guy is 17 and he's breaking into houses to fund the heroin habit. That is bad, that part of it is bad. Why is he doing it? Okay. And then the last sort of part about no change is, I think they think the science of it is a bit woolly and they're sceptical about it, so they don't really believe it. I guess it's to do with them being set in their ways. It's much easier, I found, that for people to tag people in the justice system as criminals, so we stigmatise them, we call them criminals, offenders, and that they're bad and evil. Because as soon as we start switching on this trauma-informed lens or ACEs lens, things become a lot more difficult. It becomes a massive can of worms. It's a massive problem. So it's easy just to say, you're scum, you're neds, you're junkies, you're nothing, you're worthless, you're evil, you're bad. And as Natalie said in her poem, basically, nobody saw her dad as a good man. And we all make mistakes. We might not end up in jail, but nobody sees the good man. And as I say, I've dealt with no clients who I found to be bad or evil, but they do bad things. And I'm not going to, I give an example in one of the talks you're going to get. So I'm not rehearsing the talk I've already done. You've got that, but I talk about a client called Jerry, who was very kind to me, and he was seen as a monster. And you can learn, if you want to watch it, find out more, you can learn about Jerry's story. So what I do now is, without actually asking the question of my client, what has happened to you, I dig a little bit deeper in scratching the surface of their lives, so that they're in the criminal justice system. You're asking what's happened to them, not what's wrong with them. And you see very quickly that a kid who's taken heroin at 13 isn't taking heroin at 13 because it's great fun and it's a great recreational drug, because they're in massive pain. As soon as you do that, as I say, you open a massive can of worms. You're then learning things about people that you really don't know what to do with, because clients now often say to me, because whether there's a way of me dealing with them, the way I'm speaking to them, the way I listen to them, because when I listen to them, I hear them. That's been a difference. I listen to all clients, but I really hear them, and I get that they're in pain, and they'll often reveal to me terrible trauma in their life. And then I don't know what to do with that. So that's something, again, I spoke to Jerry earlier. I'm hoping to take questions from you later, but it's hard to know what to do because there's not massive resources. The CAM system, the children and adult mental health teams, there's a massive backlog, 6 to 8 months, putting people into rehab. There's no beds, there's no resources. Social work, as I say, surprisingly, don't really want to know. I had one lad who revealed to me, and he explained everything about his life. He'd been abused at a very early age. And I'd encouraged him to tell a social worker, and I said to the social worker, he's got something to tell you, and I gave her a massive hint as to what it was. And she said, I really don't need to know that. And I thought, that was a bit odd, because in the system before that, up to the age of 15, it's all about the welfare of the child is paramount, that everything surrounds what is best for the child, and knowing about this stuff. And that's maybe often why they're in the care system or in the children's hearing system. It's all about the child. And I say that up to the age of 15, they're a wee shame. And then when they hit 16 in the adult court, they're a wee shite. And that can't be right. Where's the crossover? There's a big, massive gap. And again, we can discuss that later in terms of questions. So not knowing what to do with people, I think, is a massive thing. And again, Natalie and Jed talk brilliantly about getting beds, recovery beds, that the cost of putting someone in jail is about £36,000 to £40,000 a year, and having someone in rehab for a full year is only about £25,000. Not that necessarily someone's going to be in a rehab centre for a full year, but they might be. Recently, I was going to talk about this at the end, but it's convenient to talk about it just now. That very recently, an ex-client of mine had seen what I was doing. He's not from adverse childhood experiences, had a very positive childhood, but he said he admired what I was doing and wondered if he could help and maybe donate some money. And I was like, well, I don't need your money. I don't know. And he came back brilliantly and said, I'm going to pay initially for 40 sessions with a psychologist, with a therapist, to help these young people deal with it. And I thought that was absolutely genius. So he's now linked me to psychologist. I've referred my first client to them, and I'm really going to give that over to Aidan a bit, because I don't really want to choose like a lottery my clients, because probably more than half of them come from massive adversity. And I'd love to, a wee bit like the starfish story, I'd love to cure them all, but I know that I'm not going to be able to. That was a really nice gesture. I'm just saying, if we invested a little bit more money into treatments and therapy and getting to the root causes of the problems, we would do a lot better in terms of outcomes for court, for community and society. So I think that's something, again, really important that we have to address. There's a phrase that Karen McCluskey uses about smart justice, and that really takes a bit of a leap of faith for particularly judges, prosecutors, the police, about recognising the concept of adverse childhood experiences and trying to be clever about stopping the cycle. As you know, putting people in jail just does not work. And yet we've invested around 30, they announced a few months ago, just before lockdown, about £35 million was going into the criminal justice system to help with probation, to help get people professional help, so £35,000. And yet we're about to spend over £3 million on building a new jail. So where is the commitment to actually change things? You would have to question that, given the massive scale. If they did it the other way around, what do you think that would look like? If they address people's addiction, because the addiction isn't the issue, it's what's underneath the addiction. So you're not going to cure people by giving them methadone. I know that's controversial, but you're not going to fix people's problems by giving them methadone. And you might stop them offending for a wee while because they're getting free drugs, but that's not going to cure it. I know Peter is doing the brilliant work with recovery and his van that he very bravely, against advice, even advice from me, that he's considering providing clean needles, an ability for people to use safely. Now, while people are in addiction, that's really important. But long term, not to determine or be middle class or you can't be taking smack. The reality is it's to help what's underneath it. So if someone chooses to take heroin, that's their choice and they're comfortable with that. I would rather legalise that than have them going in the justice system, because economically there's no win, but also morally there's no win. We allow people to get stupidly drunk. We allow people to be addicted to alcohol because, do you know why? Because we all drink, so that's okay then, but we don't all take drugs. And again, maybe highlighting a wee bit earlier in my talk than I wanted to, but Natalie and Jed and First Time Inside and all these people talk about the direct deaths in addiction. And in 2017, I think we were just short off, I put the figure somewhere, it's 1,187 deaths in 2018, drug deaths. And nobody really bothers, other than the families that are affected in groups. And we don't bother because we other these people, we go, they're just junkies. But they aren't, they're people who, if we knew their story, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't treat them that way and we wouldn't look at them that way. And I appreciate the people who are listening to this talk don't think that way. So I'm just saying, the world I'm in, including the lawyers, we view people as punters. We other them because it's easier, because as soon as you get sucked into people's lives, as I've been doing, it's absolutely exhausting. It's bad for business. Reducing crime is not something I thought that I would want. I've turned 50 now, and I wondered whether, as I've had my own business since 1998, I wonder whether if I knew this science and knowledge, that I would be doing what I'm doing now 20 odd years ago. And I'd like to hope I would have, but I can see that it's had an effect on my business, because the work I'm doing and the signposting I'm doing with these very young, prolific offenders in the justice system is to reduce their offending. It doesn't always cure it. And I'll come on to the three factors I think are key. But when a 15-year-old comes through with a petition with 10 charges of housebreaking on it, I used to look at that child and think, he's going to net me about, over the next 20 years, he's going to net me about 50 grand. He's going to have loads of cases. He's going to make me rich. And now when he comes through the door, I look at him and I think, how am I going to stop you offending and what's happened to you? And that sounds very honourable and look at me, that's really brilliant, but I now cannot help it and I'm not going to change it. And my business partner is the same. And we look to divert people and get them out of the justice system. And at the moment, with COVID and lockdown, that's really quite hard to do. It's hard to do the emotional stuff with them and having chats with them and diverting them because they trust you. So at a micro level, what is it I do differently now that I didn't do before? Is I think I present differently to people. As I say, I listen and I hear them properly. I don't just listen to their stories. I properly hear them. And I try and empathise with them. As I say, I've no lived experience of massive adversity in my life. But I can relate to what they talk about because I've witnessed it for so long and I've witnessed the damage. And I think about what's happened to them and I discuss it and I build up a relationship of trust. And with that trust, it will then be happier for me to say, well, go and see Aidan a bit, go and meet up with James Docherty from the Violence Reduction Unit, go and get some hydrotherapy and sit in a cold pool with Jed and freeze your bogs off, because they'll trust me to refer them to people who have got the lived experience, who can actually get them out of the hole because they've been in that hole. And that's been a massive difference. I try and give them a bit of hope. So there's effectively, what I'm talking about there is compassion for them and a wee bit of kindness. And I try and give them hope and I persevere with them. And what I mean by that is clients who are very angry might say to me or blame me, go like, fuck off you, or again, sorry for the swearing, or I don't give a fuck. And that's them saying to me, I really do care. I want you to tell me that you care back, and I do. And I can't fix them, I can't make their problems go away, but I can care and I can deal with them in a manner which I never used to do. At times I fail, I get disappointed about maybe trying to put a young guy I see is in pain on a course. I've done this with the community justice people who are brilliant, and trying to push them down that path and they're maybe not ready or they don't want to go. And in my wee lack of self-regulation, I'm like, oh, ungrateful, or can't believe you wouldn't do it. And then I've got to take a step back and say, right, let's go again. And when he's ready, and James and Kevin and all the brilliant mentors will say, he will have heard what you've had to say and he'll come back when he's ready. And I have really found that. So I'm less sensitive about me, but that's my problem rather than theirs. And I used to think I was being kind to my clients and about my clients when I used to go to their funerals. And now, when I go to their funerals, I now see that as a failure, because not that it's my fault that they're dead, but that I need to try and do more. So that's what I try and do. In court, what goes on? What do I do differently? I talk differently. My language is different. I talk about respect. I talk about recognising their trauma. I talk about them being kind to them, about hope, and giving them a second chance, not just a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance to persevere with them. Because what often happens is, by the age of 21 and we're slamming them in the jail, we've given up on them. That's a signal to them is, I don't care about you anymore. Now, sometimes the jail may be necessary if someone is out of control and dangerous, and we have to put them in jail. That's okay. But we need to still help people in jail. We need to persevere with them, because if we don't, and you give up on someone that's 21, they're likely to die, maybe by suicide, by overdose, or they're maybe going to kill someone else and they spend the rest of their life in jail. My pleas and mitigation, which effectively what I do in court, so someone's found guilty or they plead guilty and they explain about their past, and the judges are sitting looking at me at first going, you on a bit? You gone mental? But they don't do that anymore. And at first when I did it, my colleagues would ridicule me, and again, I've gone soft, you've gone a wee bit mad. I was a wee bit like an ACEs evangelist, so they would think that I'd literally gone mental. But very slowly, the judges are recognising this, and I think they are reluctant to see it because it becomes more complicated, as I say. Social workers in the reports now are talking about this person's childhood experiences. At first, that was really what glibly would say. I'd say their background was quite hard, but now they're specifying them and saying, this is the likely reason this young person has entered the criminal justice system. And of course, we're not just talking about young people, we're talking about people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I've got a client who's in his 80s, who's suffered terrible abuse, and he's only now started to commit offences. And the judge is saying, well, this is a load of pish, because if he had all these adverse childhood experiences and you're linking that to his criminality, then he'd have done it years ago. He'd spent a lot of his earlier life being psychiatrically unwell, had been addicted to alcohol, and only now he's becoming a bit more wondered, is entering the justice system. But it stems from his abuse when he was a child. So there's lots more to do. There's a desire for knowledge. We need solutions. So by that, therapies, the type of work that Jed's doing, Natalie's doing, and all the wonderful mentors, the work that psychologists do, again, professionals. Judicial training. So again, I spent a wee bit of time with the Judicial Institute. They've promised that they'll make that part of their plans. And going forward, there is the Scottish Council on Sentencing, again, part of the pack. I'd ask you to look at that and go online with it, because they're talking about changing the rules for people up to 25 and looking towards suggesting that rather than under 21s, we regard them as young offenders. That's what they're referred to, is that we can look at people up to the age of 25. And the reason that that's significant is because the science suggests that the brain development, neurology, develops till 25, so that the judges think we can still save that person. That's not to say they'll chuck away the key for the rest of them, but what they're talking about is addiction, mental health, care experience, and they're saying these are things that we will look at. What they're really not calling it, and what it is childhood trauma or adverse childhood experiences. And I've asked them to call it that, so that there's a broader range: death of a parent, incarceration of a parent, separation of parents, and all these things that add up and build stress in a child that she may struggle with in later life. So there's a paper on that. I would very much like you to add your own thoughts to that. I have various examples. That's really ultimately the end of what I wanted to say, but I've various wee stories. I don't know whether, Jed, I think that's me 40 minutes in, whether you maybe want me to tell you a couple of things about retiring judges. I'm okay for time?
Yes.
So just a couple of things that have happened. As I say, now going forward, judges are a little bit more on the ball, but they'll still say daft things like, your client seems to be going off the rails, and no understanding that this care experienced girl had never been on the rails. And that's a wee bit of the difficulty with rehabilitation. Rehabilitation means we are putting them back into the place that they came from. But if you came from a place that's very dark and terrible, you don't want to go back there. You maybe need to have something else rather than rehabilitation. The word can mean other things, but basically we want to restore people to in a way that they can self-regulate, that they don't desire drugs and alcohol, and can live hopefully some form of fruitful life. By that, they need to deal with the crap that's going on with them. One judge, when she retired after 15 years on the bench, I went to her talk when she retired, and she tells the story that on her last day, a girl who had spent the whole time from her first day as a judge until her last day, this girl appeared in her court constantly, massive drug issues, and she wanted to let the girl know that she cared. So she got her wig and gown off, she came down from the bench, and she gave her a hug to show her that she cared about her. And at the end, she welcomed questions about I'm going to do in a couple of minutes for you guys. I put my hand up. I thought, a bit nervous about it, but I said, Judge, what do you think that girl's life would have looked like if you'd hugged her the first time rather than the last time you met her? And so I'm not talking about judges hugging people, but I am talking about judges early on being kind to people, being compassionate, giving them hope, persevering with them. And that's what I would entitle or use the phrase presiding with kindness. And judges would be reluctant to do that, going, I'm not wanting the Daily Mail saying about me, I'm a softie. I've got to be tough on crime, because if we're not tough on crime, they're going to keep doing it. Definitely not my experience. You put someone in jail, statistically they're more likely to go back there. If you change how you are, and this is the big thing for me, is people, the professionals, have got to change first before they can expect the young people and the people that struggle in the criminal justice system, the people with addictions, to change. They will not change if we keep offering the same way of dealing with people. That's a stupid thing. That's the lack of smartness. So the smart justice is we change as professionals, treat people with respect, look at people differently, offer help, and it works. I'll give you one last example before we do a Q&A. We'll call this wee boy Brendan. That's not his name. Brendan in Edinburgh Sheriff Court a few months ago, and he'd got himself a breach of an order. So he wasn't doing his order, and he'd gone off the rails. But during the time there was a warrant for his arrest, he got himself a house. He started working with a charitable trust. He started working with Aid and Abet. He started working with addiction services, with a psychologist, and I appeared for him in court, and the judge, female judge, says, I tell him about his childhood. His childhood included getting his ribs broken when he was 8 months old by his parents in a non-accidental injury, being introduced to heroin by his mother, aged 13, and all sorts of hints of other abuse and horrendous life. And I'm telling the judge this, pouring my heart out for the wee boy behind me. She asked a very open question because she looked all confused, and she's saying, what is it you're asking me to do? I thought that was the wrong question to ask me. I said, I want you to praise him. Sorry? I thought she hadn't heard me, but she was just totally stunned. I said, I want you to praise him. Praise him, she says. I'm thinking about sending him to the jail. That's where he's going. I said, well, don't send him to the jail just now. And she let him out for 4 weeks. And we came back and we had reports from Aid and Abet, the charitable trust, the housing department, the health visitor, the psychologist, the social worker who talked about all these adverse childhood experiences I discussed, and about how horrendous his life had been, and how it was hardly surprising. Not only had he taken heroin, which he was introduced to, but that he kept taking heroin to take away the pain in his life. And as I got up to stand up, the judge told me to sit down and to be quiet. I'm thinking, here we go. And she spent the next 10 minutes praising that boy. He continues to struggle. And he came out of court and he said, nobody has ever spoken to me like that in my life. And he felt brilliant about himself. And that wasn't a cure. It was a different way of dealing with him. And someone left with their head up. And as I say, a wee bit like Cisco, who was a good man, who nobody was willing to listen to. The judges and us, and all the professionals and all the social workers and all the teachers have got to look at people a little bit differently. So thanks for listening. That's we've gone on about 5 or 10 minutes, a wee bit longer than I was meant to, but thank you.
Fantastic, Iain. Thank you very, very much. Before we get to some questions, I've just got some observations, but I'll try and frame them as some questions just to get a flavour of dialogue there, Iain. Some of the great stuff you're talking about is cases in a lot of language around that's trauma informed. So let's inform people about why early life experiences can have this impact on other people, but not just informing professionals, but also informing people who have had adverse experiences in their own life, because a lot of people are coming from very shame-based environments. There is a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of self-loathing and self-resentment there. And the idea is that people's symptoms are being criminalised. People's symptoms, addiction, criminal activity, aggression, these things are being not just criminalised but demonised as well. And when we can show people that, listen, this is not just wee Jimmy, wee Mary or wee Frankie, this is a wide-ranging, in-depth scientific study over a long period of time that's shown the irrefutable correlation between these experiences and these outcomes. And I think it's just the first time so that we can alleviate the shame. But here's where I am, and it informs the work from my personal work, the stuff in the recovery communities, but also the stuff in the care review that we just done in Scotland. Big top, massive thorough deep dive into the care system in Scotland. We need to move away from the first stage is trauma informed. The second stage needs to become trauma responsive. And the third stage after that is that we need to educate lived experience, work with professionals to understand that professionals and systematic approaches will not heal anybody. They will provide the foundations for somebody to heal, but we need to, I believe, an individual needs to take responsibility for their own recovery. But that covers a wide-ranging spectrum where organisations like Cisco like the fabulous work done in the Violence Reduction Unit, Homeboy Industries in America, aid and abet here, where we can't expect one person just to get some information, have a eureka moment in their life transform. It's not going to happen like that. There is going to be a journey back, which we talk about returning somebody back to their natural state. So here's my question in this just now. Although the judiciary and the court systems by, and here's a wee phrase that's taken me private, he, meaning Iain Smith, the character I'm looking at on the screen just now, is a legend in the justice world for what he's doing, Jed. So somebody's just sent me that message there. Well,
yeah, I'll give him the $5 later, but thanks.
There's another one. You're a legend, Smithy. Well done, bro. So there's loads of good stuff here, Iain, right? And there's people like yourself that's bringing that stuff to the forefront. But the real question is, what options does a judge have? So they become humanised, they become a motive, they recognise that there's a person behind the behaviour, there's a human being behind the behaviour's a communication, help, it's right, but the help is through slashings, knife crime, antisocial behaviour, house threat and domestic violence, for instance. So we're taking the symptoms, but we need to deal with the cause, and the underlying cause is trauma. But a judge is, what they go, what's their disposal? Very limited stuff. So somebody's so antisocial that it's no safe for the society for him to be in community. He goes to prison. Very limited resources in prison, right? So it's a punishment, so we punish the symptoms. But say they don't send them to prison, where do you send them? Because you say aid and abet. Where are they getting their funding from? System, no funding. No funding. So what about the Violence Reduction Unit? Brilliant place to go. Is there space and capacity in the Violence Reduction Unit for 500 new people to start Monday? No, right? Despite the fact that we know that that's working and they're well funded, but there's all these organisers. So what is the disposal options for a judge for somebody who is antisocial and it's no safe really to put them in the community?
So they're very limited. Obviously, there's restriction of liberty. You can stick them in the house, but they're going to be drinking or battering their wives or their wives battering them or whatever it will be. So the solution is the big gap, because at the moment, as I say, with the guidelines draft of Scottish Sentencing Council, they're going in the right direction. So they've listened to the science. They've said, right, okay, we get there's something in that. Let's see how we can help them. But the gap is where the help is, because social workers are immediately seen by most or many people immediately as people in authority who they might not trust. So that takes a bit of time, but also are they going to produce the solutions? As you say, people with lived experience who can actually get people out of holes and say, look, pal, I've been there. I can tell you how to get out of this hole. That's a gap. As I say, and the reason there's a big gap is aid and abet experience it, Cisco experience it, all the different charities experience it. And now with COVID, what is going to inevitably be a recession is we're going to be the first hit. And there isn't going to be that resources, but it's short-term gain to build bigger and better prisons with £300 million compared to spending £35 million on helping folk. That to me is folk who still haven't seen what I've seen. And I'm just saying, that's the big gap. If you can change that, if you switch it around the other way, you'll make a massive difference to people's lives.
Iain, can I just ask, and you might know the question to this, but to the wider people who may know the question to this as well, is the funding today a 5-year parliamentary cycle? Have we got at the top of the top level, we've got a budget, a 5-year sort of plan, and in that 5-year plan, is that why we've got such short-sighted views on whether we spend money long term to get much better financial? So I know it's a very human story, the ACES is a very human story, and we're looking at the human story, but is there any focus on the actual financial story? Because beyond the human story, which is fundamental to get public recognition, and to take that into the professional bodies for sentencing, for criminal justice, for addiction, mental health and stuff like that. But see if somebody presented a financial argument about, look, over a 10-year period, it's going to cost this, but if we don't do that, bearing in mind 26 years for 26,000 a year for Phoenix Future, 40,000 for Berlin prison, same 12 months thing, what is the outcomes out of that? So is there a model that's looking at the financial?
I think the government, the Scottish Government just now, they've introduced a lot of positive things. So they've got for example, prosecutors who have met with and policymakers at Crown Office have said, we're trying to divert young people away from the court system. So not just children's panels, we're talking people older, so they'll give them a second chance and take them away. But from a budgeting point of view, which government, right, and this is, we're all maybe right-thinking people and going, right, okay, we're all right on, but which government wants to say out loud, see the person that's broken into your house, he's had a terrible life, and what we're going to do with him is we're not going to send him to jail, and we're going to try and help him as an individual, because folk will not see beyond there because they're angry and upset, and as I say, see wee shites and saying, I want him punished. Because government and politics, they want the power, they want to be in power, and it takes a very brave government to say, let's try and help, in quotations, criminals. I mean, what they're doing is helping people who are damaged, who have got problems. And if they saw it that way, we could explain the science to people, maybe we would have a better response. But what I'm saying is, I think there's a fear, I could be wrong, but I'm saying I think there's a fear with politicians that they don't want to alienate a big section of the public, some of whom still want hanging, some of whom think that people are junkies and scum and Neds and don't see that these are people. I mean, the biggest thing that happened to me when I was getting to this point was be going to funerals and listening to some of the music that the kids liked that died in overdoses. And going, oh my God, what beautiful taste in music. Or hearing about the wee boy who didn't know who had started going to church. And I'm thinking, he was going about with guns and doing all sorts of mad things. Near at his funeral, I'm finding out about things because I didn't really want to look behind what he was doing. And I'm just saying, when you start to know about people, and again, Joe Berry, who's here with us, could talk about justice coming, people coming together, rehabilitation, restorative justice, which Joe talks about. Joe's father was killed by the IRA. In the Brighton bomb, he was an MP. And Joe now works with Patrick McGee, who was a member of the IRA who killed their father. What a massive level of compassion and forgiveness that she must show to do that. But she does it because she's gone behind what was going on. And I think people whose houses were broken into, if they could go behind what that person was doing, I'm not saying they would then feel sorry for them or think it's a wee shame, they wouldn't see monsters, they wouldn't see the devil, they wouldn't see evil people, they would see broken people, damaged people. I think that would make a difference. But in terms of budget and a macro scale of what we should do, I don't have the answers to be fair.
Well, I think as well, I'm just looking at some of the questions here, but listen guys, if they're posting some brilliant points and questions on this chat, if you know how to do the raise hand option on here, which you basically just go to more, there's an option, raise hand, and then we can just take questions from you. Again, for the new people that's coming in, can we make it questions? Leave some of your experience in it, but can we just take maybe a minute to answer the question rather than a general share about your own experience, if that's fine. So here we go. Is it Shamila? You can just unmute yourself, Shamila.
Be kind, Shamila. I know where you live.
I can ask you on mute. There you go.
Shamila, I can't hear you.
Right, okay. Here I'm here. I'm saying I'm still waiting on my book. I know you know where I stay. No, that was great. Thank you so much, and for giving up your Saturday as well. It was really great.
Is this Saturday?
Quick question is, for me, trauma is a public health issue, as is addictions. And so, in your journey through here, are you yet talking to colleges and universities where law students are studying to try and lobby for an actual individual module that sits on its own that covers this for law students? When I studied journalism in my degree, and you get to study a law in that, and it's very specific for journalism, and there could be crossover within colleges and unis, I think, to design a criminal justice module that would educate those professionals new coming into the system about ACEs, trauma, and everything that goes with it. And then your new lot coming in are speaking your language, and you've got allies waiting there, you know.
So it's not. So the first thing is, it's not just me that's doing this. There's loads of lawyers who are picking up on this and doing really good work. Tony Bowen, Melissa Rutherford, and then the Nadine Martin in a civil context. So I'm not unique in this. So I don't want to pretend I'm the only one doing it. I guess I've got the biggest gob willing to speak up. But in terms of that, there was someone who contacted me very recently. I can't remember which university she was from. I think it was Aberdeen or Edinburgh, from the law school, who wishes to campaign to do that very thing. So I'm not going to be able to do all of this on my own anyway. But she said, no, I think this should be part of it. So there's materials available. As I say, you're going to get some of the materials to introduce this very simple concept. A very quick example of that. My first meeting as a trainee lawyer, I went along with the senior lawyer, court lawyer, to a meeting. This guy's a sheriff, okay? He's now a sheriff. And it was about her divorce. And she said, I'm here for a divorce. And the partner said, right, asked me when she was married, when they separated, and if she had children. And she said, oh yeah, I've got 3 children. Oh, no, she said, sorry, I've got 2 children. One of them died. And he said, I'm only interested in the ones that are alive. Now, I know that sounds like that's not true, but that made me realise, this is going back to 1993, that I wasn't want to be that sort of lawyer, that where was the compassion? So I think you would struggle to teach compassion, but I think what you could teach is the science of adverse childhood experiences. And so, for example, I've been at the hospital with Kevin Neary, and we've spoke about adverse childhood experiences, and you would expect doctors to know about all this, but they don't. So my friend who's a GP in West Calder, she's part of the West Lothian ACEs campaign. They've got the whole of the council to advise GPs about the science of ACEs. Hospitals are getting involved. So you've got the NES programme, the NHS National Education, I think it's service. So education and health, I think, are primarily brilliant sources in their own world to provide education, and lawyers again need to be educated. So I guess the public health model, as you rightly called it, Shamil, I think is the way forward. Lawyers need to know about it, but I think educators in health being the ones to press that, rather than necessarily maybe lawyers like me saying, here's my wee story, this is what I can tell you. I'm just saying that the science of it should come from experts, like people like Olivia Gomez-Bell, who is there. And I think Jed raised the question about, we don't just need psychologists, we need lived experience. I'd be quite interested to know, I know there's other people with their hands up, whether Olivia Gomez-Bell, who's on, would work in tandem with people with lived experience. I don't know if you've got Olivia there, Gerald.
Put a hand up. Yeah, Olivia. That was brilliant. Thanks for that question. Really good. Some of the comments in relation to that is like really supportive, but it stimulated much more dialogue here. Somebody who had his hand up there was called Reinhardt, I believe. I'm not sure who it is. But James is wanting to come in. Can you unmute yourself, James?
Thanks, Jed.
Oh,
All right, Iain. Iain, thanks a lot. I missed the start of it.
that was terrible.
So I've got a right cracking valid reason. It's been late for court and having a cracking excuse. I'd probably get away with it. So, here's a question I was wanting to ask you, right? How does it affect you emotionally, and how do you keep your self-care robust enough to show up every day and navigate the potential of vicarious trauma, given the depth of your empathy?
He wants me to start greeting, doesn't he? Yeah, you want me to start greeting again, James? I'm not brilliant about it. James's colleague, Kirsty Giles, who's a psychologist, psychotherapist, and a couple of other psychologists sort of saying that you have to be careful about self-care, and I think that's really important. I think at times I struggle, and a lot of the talks I've done, so the reason I didn't talk about some of the stuff I talk about is I usually start crying, so there you go. There's another sign of vulnerability, but because it's really hard and it's really draining, and that vicariously you take in part of your client's hurt. And I know that sounds, again, as if that's not really true, but it is true. You can't help that feel tremendous empathy, but which you shouldn't feel, but a bit of sorrow as well, which sympathy is not really any use to anybody. That sometimes, as James says, he asked the question because he knew the answer, which is, it does affect me. But I try and rise above it. As James and the Violence Reduction Unit and other people who help people in addiction, sometimes you obviously can't save everybody. And what's the solution to that is sometimes you just have to let them go. And I hear the way Kev Neary talks, it sounds harsh of, I've just got to let him go. And when he wants to come back and he's ready, but sometimes I'll struggle to just let them let go. And I've got to recognise that I can't cure people, I can't fix people. I mean, the mentors, lived experience mentors really can do that. But even they will say, right, I've tried my best, I'll have to stop because it's affecting my health. So, yeah, so it can be sapping. It can be emotionally draining, but hugely satisfying, because what I've not really revealed here, told you in any detail, because I don't have statistics, is I see the massive difference. It sounds very big-headed. I have helped a little bit on their path to improving their lives. So I'm not going to fix them, I'm not going to make them better, but I can direct them to people that will help them. And there's a huge satisfaction in that. Altruism is a great thing in terms of for your own spirit and your health. So it does lift you up. Doing nice things, as it were, being kind is a good therapy for yourself, but it can be draining.
Thanks, Iain. Good stuff.
What do you do? Because you're working with it on a daily basis often. What is your self-care routine? And what is recommended in the VRU? What is Kirsty developed, or what do you get in terms of self-care that you get access to? Oh. Get away, James.
Unmute.
There you go. That's sure. You just unmute yourself, James. Well, what about with you, James, you come back, you're having some challenges there. I've been trying to unmute you, I don't know if that's the problem, but what we do is we'll just come back in when you can. Is it Reingard Gilchrist? Sorry, I can't pronounce your name.
Rory.
Can you unmute yourself?
You're still on mute, Rory.
I'm having some challenges unmuting. Can you do it?
Rory, ask your question by text and I'll see if I can answer it. You youngsters are good at typing quick.
Let me just check the security here. So you've got the option to unmute yourself. Definitely. Ask to unmute.
Kids in technology.
There we are.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you. So I'm a law student at the University of Dundee, and I would just like to say that was really, really interesting. Thank you very much. We've, as someone raised before, we've never really heard about adverse childhood experience in criminal law. It's much more, I find, prosecution based. You know, we hear about the crimes, we hear about, you know, how they can be punished, but that's about it, I find. So I was just wondering, would you, you know, kind of as mentioned before, would you be able to refer people to come in maybe for talks, maybe to societies or maybe in lectures itself? Because I do feel empathy isn't given enough in law school. We're kind of, you know, this is the cold hard facts, this is what the law is, but we aren't really told about the experiences. So I'd just be interested to hear about your opinion regarding that.
Okay, I do think it's important. I think, you know, not everyone that studies law, there's only a very small fraction of us that go on to be criminal lawyers, but it affects everyone as a lawyer. Because I gave the example of the divorce lady who came in and wasn't really met with any empathy at all. And how you speak to people, whether it's a conveyancing transaction or even understanding your colleagues, because this science doesn't just affect poor people, people who've got no money. It affects everybody. The study itself originally was with a cohort of middle class people. Okay, so people who are sexually abused, you don't need to be poor or live in poverty to be sexually abused. You don't need your effects. For example, there's a brilliant little video of trying to add it to the list for Jed, called Norton, Grimm and Me. And it's about a man who's now an animator and his life growing up in a boarding school and how horrendous it was for him. He had parents that loved him but didn't act lovingly. So what I would suggest is there's brilliant speakers. There's James Docherty who can't unmute himself, which is brilliant because he then can't say no, but get him along to Dundee University and talk. You'll not hear anyone better, I think, or you might, in fact, if Callum's here as well. Callum's a great speaker. Again, hopefully he can't unmute himself. Graham Armstrong, get these guys along. Get Jed along. Get the people who have effectively walked in the shoes of people who have suffered adversity. And that was the most powerful and revealing thing for me, because I could hear the voices of my clients who were perhaps not as articulate as these magicians who are here on today, laughing at me making an absolute arse of myself. But these are the people that are more powerful voices. I can come and tell you what I've done, but when you hear their stories, you'll never forget them. You'll forget mine tomorrow.
The thing with that is as well, Iain, is that the people that you've mentioned there, including myself, we have spent years, most of our adult life, recovering from experiences that we had during the early childhood. And what we do is we don't just talk about experiences, we have got fundamental and deeply disciplined self-care routines that we use on a daily basis, every single day. And the purpose that you have mentioned about cold water therapy, what happens there? Well, for instance, I took a group of people who were on the cusp and actively involved in organised crime for most of their teenage and adult life. And then because of some of the stuff they did, take them up into the mountains, take them into cold water through repeated training, through emotional regulation, deep breath work, and teach them not just about getting into a pool of water, but they're capable of doing much more than they ever thought was possible. So here's the key thing for me is, when we ask people to go in and talk to professions, students and so on, it's important that we understand that the people have got on a self-care routine, so that they're not just going up there and talking about traumatic experiences that are triggering their amygdala, so that they're now experiencing symptoms of stress through repeatedly telling their story. So it's important that when we experience trauma, events that happen as an adult, we don't need to suffer from symptoms are known as sort of traumatisation, but there is a gap between that. And the first gap is obviously education about why, and then the next part is what we're talking about now, is how do we move away from that and build resilience in people and allow people to go and start healing themselves by interagency access. So I think, James, you still got your hand up. Did you want to come back in there, mate?
He doesn't know how to unmute himself. He doesn't know how to get his hand in. Come on, James.
Is it all working, James? I think it might be a problem at my side, mate, because I'm getting a few messages for that. I normally just deal with this on my phone and it's no problem, but because I was looking to be a bit more professional, I'm on my PC and it stumped us, to be quite honest with you. There was a question there, Jed, sorry, from Victoria about whether I've done any training in the prisons. So I went to Kilmarnock prison about May 2018. We showed 300 prison staff the film Resilience, and that was with Tina Henry and Kevin Neary and Kathleen Winters from Ayrshire. So the training, I guess, was really showing the film and telling them about it. It wasn't any trauma training as such, but I think prison staff, I think it's essential that they understand. When I went, I didn't know I was going to speak because Tina knew that I'd cramped myself a wee bit like today, and didn't tell me. So I was suddenly put on the spot. And what I talked to them about is, when I walked into that prison, they asked me if I had any clients at Kilmarnock Jail, and I happened to have one. I won't mention his name. And I said to the guy, "Do you know that guy?" And he says, "Oh yeah, he's a grumpy wee shite." And I said, "All right." So I just took that in the back of my head, and as I went in, and then I had to speak to them, I said, "Put your hand up if you know this prisoner." And I said his name, and they all put their hand up and says, "Oh yeah, I hear he's a grumpy wee shite." And they went, "Aye, he's a grumpy wee shite." I said, "Here's one or two things you didn't know about him." I said, "He fought in the Iraq War. He was a desert rat. Here's something else you didn't know about him. He was abused when he was young, in terms of physically abused. He had a terrible lifestyle. All these things that we're talking about in resilience. So the next time you pass him and you look at him and you treat him like he's a grumpy wee shite, he's going to act like one. Why don't you treat him differently?" And they were all shamefaced, but that's information that they sort of need to know about. So in answer to Victoria's question, I don't think there's great training, but I know that the VRU, I know that Community Justice, I know that other organisations, including JEDS, Cisco, etc., are going into, or trying to get into the prisons. I know the WISE group are doing it, trying to get the message in.
which is really important. So it's a good question. I don't know the immediate answer.
James, you're unmuted now.
Right. Thanks, Ian. So it's basically in reference to the question earlier on about self-care. It kind of touches on what Ian was saying about, so it's well known, I've been well known in the justice arena. I try to raise awareness of adverse childhood experiences and how trauma shapes the social perceptions and how it alters your attitude as you go through life. And one of the things about living in that experience is you don't choose the environment you were born into. That's why I always use the analogy that you don't blame a plant when it isn't growing well. You change the environment and you create the conditions that allow it to fulfil its potential. And that's the same with the human brain. It will never reach its full potential unless you get the environment right and the healthy relationship found them. So I've always been drawn to people like Joe Berry, who operate for a compassion that I aspire to be like, because she can work alongside the person who fundamentally took a course of action that ended her father's life and robbed her of her father, and that she does it for the greater good. And I also know that through my own adverse childhood experiences, you would never have punished me into a better way of living. My life was already a punishing enough experience, and that sometimes I looked as if I was a wee boy that needed a boot up the arse, but it was actually a cuddle I needed. If you'd have cuddled me or gave me praise, I wouldn't have knew where to go with it. But if you gave me my character, I had a reservoir of comebacks. If you gave me my character, because that was the environment I grew up in. But the self-care thing is critical, basically, to recover from trauma, because recently, so I've got a CPTSD diagnosis, right? So I've got complex post-traumatic stress. It isn't just one-off event. It's just layers and layers of stuff. It goes all the way back into my early childhood. And recently I was triggered with my PTSD, and that's why I was late into the session, because if I had to start working with a therapist again, a skilled therapist, you need a navigator to navigate you through stuff. Because I can't rely on my own knowledge base and my own theories and all the stuff that I've learned over the years. I need to go back to that place of I'm no good and get vulnerable and be in that space of allowing people to help me. And it's been quite liberating actually in my work, because of the VRU and what they do. They've totally supported me. So they've totally supported me in getting a therapist and navigating me through this stuff. So I still experience aspects of my childhood trauma. What I'm also clear on is that ever since it was recognised that I had a public health problem and not a criminal justice problem, I started to recover from my trauma, and that I've not been addicted to a substance or medicated it in any shape or form since over 10 years ago. And that was because people who understood my plight gave me a full knowledge of my condition. And if you get a full knowledge of your condition, you can apply the self-care to it. But if the judicial system, as you know, Ian, hasn't got a full knowledge of your condition, then their best efforts actually exacerbate the problem, because they'll put you in an environment like Berlin, which is a nursery for unresolved trauma, and addiction being one outcome of trauma is rife in prison, and drugs are readily available. So the best effort that you can do to alleviate the suffering and the distress you're in is take chemicals in a prison, and some of them are state sanctioned as well, which only puts a plaster over the problem. So that's why I love what you do, and I absolutely love you, and that's why I'm always saying about what you do in your own self-care, because I know the vicarious energy of dealing day in, day out with people who are in pain all the time can transfer onto you. Then you can take that stuff home, and then it affects your waking moments. Then you get up and you've got wee Johnny on your mind, and you're trying to take a course of action to make his life better. And you can forget your own practices in the process, and you'll empty out your empathy tank, or you'll default to maybe your old coping mechanisms. We're quite complex as human beings, but the solutions are quite simple actually when you listen to guys like Jed who talk about getting up and doing cold water therapy, and just the whole community that's surrounded with that, and all these different processes of healing. And that's basically where I'm at in my life. My life's about trying to alleviate human suffering. And if I can use my experience to do that, I'll do it. And I don't think we'll put a dent on some of the social problems in our culture unless we revolutionise how we raise children. It's all right to know you're loved, but were you nurtured as a child? Was all your emotional and nurturing and psychological and not just your physical needs? I was the best stress boy in the scheme. But inside, my insides didn't match the outside. And that's the difference. Your insides need to match your outside. And that involves self-care. That's me.
Never share a stage. Never share a stage with James, because he's too good.
James, thanks a lot. You're a good
Thanks,
man.
brother.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for linking us in with Iain for this wee chat as well, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James.
And if there's any other questions, now would be a good time, because we're coming to that point where we're looking to wrap up. I can see O'Neill straight just now. I've just seen you raising your hand, so I'll look to unmute you. How we do that is unmute, and then you'll see a wee bit. That's you. Oh, you've done it, so just you do it again. You've done it at both. There you go. Is that you? No, you've done it a wee second ago.
While we're waiting for you, Miss O'Neill, if that is your name, just very quickly to say that the VRU are holding a talk on Thursday. It's free. You'll get the information on their Twitter page, probably their website, and that will feature, I think, James, but it'll also feature Joe Berry, who we referred to, and it was a brilliant speaker. It's free, so sign up for that as well. And then I think next week, Graham Armstrong, who's a brilliant speaker, is going to come on with Jed next week. He made the young team, so sorry, you're unmuted. I'll shut up.
No, that's okay. No, that's fine. My name's Ailey. This is my work computer I'm on today, so that's why it says O'Neill. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that as well today. I work in school nursing in Western Bartonshire, and I think that it was just interesting the stuff you were saying, like at the beginning, about how it's like I hate speaking on these things. I hate speaking on these Zoom things as well. But I think we've got, like, overall, there's lots of people that work with children and families and with people on this as well today, I can see. And there's lots of knowledge out there about ACEs, I think, as well. But I think we don't really have it out enough in the public and with the people that it matters to. And I think, you know, I see Jerry's on this as well today, Jerry Diamonds, and he did that great thing at Clydebank High as well. And we've been to like lots of conferences and things as well to do with ACEs. But it was what somebody mentioned at the beginning. James, you've done great. We've seen like the stuff that you've done as well that's been brilliant. But what somebody had mentioned was about well, Jerry, you said it like at the end about how if you're triggered by anything as well, and I think there is that wee kind of reluctance of professionals for putting things out there, because what if we can't help the people then that need it, like after watching, you know, if you are triggered by watching Resilience. But I think we do need to get it out more, and more so, like you were saying, there isn't people saying, oh, you know, they be shites and things like that as well. They have to get it out more in the public, and sort of to take that fear away that we can, like, even as individuals, you know, the work that, if you've been through these experiences, everyone's on a journey as well, aren't they? And if you've been through those experiences, you can also help the people that are further down. And it's just like everybody playing a wee part. Thank you.
Ailey, I tell you, the thing that's most surprising for me with people from early years and other teachers is they'll often say to me, I can tell you now who your clients are going to be in a few years' time. And I'm like, well, I can tell you that you can be the person that stops that. And I think educators are really critical, especially in early years, to intervene and perhaps potentially to break a cycle of adversity. Not that it becomes their responsibility, but recognising that you can make a difference. I mean, I'm making a wee bit of a difference, but almost when it's too late because the damage is already done.
Yeah.
You guys in early years, nursery age, primary 1, 2 and 3, when their brains are developing at a really rapid stage, what massive differences you could make. So I don't want to hear educators ever saying to me, I know the kids that are going to be your clients. I don't want to know them. So well done for what you do.
Fantastic.
Any other? Someone raised their hand there. I saw another hand.
Raymond Lambert. Hi, Raymond, you're unmuted.
Hello, yes, my name is Raymond Lambert. Thank you very much, Ian and Gerald, for organising this. I have a question on behalf of Anne-Marie Keane Probation in Dublin, and I'll just read that. With the changing face of the courts and the courtroom emerging from the COVID situation specifically, the disconnect is massive. I think we can credit you with the term smart justice, and you have covered that already, but do you see now an opportunity for smart justice to develop? What needs to happen? Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll catch up together for this pint in Dublin.
Yes, indeed, next time I'm over. So for me, the big change for smart justice is the judges and prosecutors, because the prosecutors bring the cases in so they can do other things, and then judges, when they've got them, can do the clever things. But as Jed has pointed out after I spoke, is the big gap is what it is we're going to offer, because we don't really have the resources. And what worries me post-COVID is here's a brilliant opportunity to change things and absolutely transform things, to revolutionise our justice system. But the big problem is going to be there's no money. And what is another problem is whether or not, as I say, for example, we have something called CAMS, Children and Adult Mental Health. We refer children who are displaying issues in teenagers, etc., and young adults, and we send them to there. But the waiting list, as I understand it, is about 8-10 months. And by then, somebody's maybe either killed themselves, gone into addiction, or just gone off the rails. So, I mean, that's my worry. So I think the COVID stuff, the lockdown stuff, would be a brilliant chance to reboot what our system is. I think, unfortunately, it's going to damage it. But at the moment, they're letting loads of people out, right? So there's less crime at the moment. People are in their houses, so there's less housebreaking. The shops are shut, so we can't steal as much. The dealers are more conspicuous on the streets, so they're not really about. The drugs are bad and expensive. So there's lots of things going on because of lockdown. But what it also shows is all the people that have been locking up historically were not locking up, and nobody's dying. All the people who were drug addicts, who were locking up for stealing because we didn't know what else to do with them. We're not doing that with them just now because we can't do that because of COVID, we don't want to put them in unless they're high risk of endangering the public. So there's a lot of things going on. There's smart things going on, but I don't think they'll last. And unfortunately, I think the economic impact will be prioritised on the basis of short-term gain, not seeing over the hill that long-term we would benefit from doing the right thing by people who are damaged and struggling. Because I'm not talking about everybody, Raymond. I'm not saying everyone in the justice system is damaged in their childhood or maybe in adulthood they maybe witnessed something terrible and it's traumatised them. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of them, and the ones that are in prison and the ones that are involved in addiction are heavily, heavily traumatised.
Okay, listen,
I don't have the solution, sorry.
Yeah, wonderful to have this addressed. Can I just add one thing in case you don't all know, in the context of ACEs, the film Cracked Up, which has now been made available on Netflix. If you check the Twitter account for Cracked Up, you can sign up for that. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. And Jane from ACE Connections has issued and followed up with 3 talks already. And they're fabulous talks. We've had Bessel van der Kolk, we've had the people of the film, of course, and recently Gabor Mate. So you can sign up for that, and they're just fabulous talks because they are all ACEs orientated, and they are actually very different from the ordinary stuff. So thanks.
Thanks for sharing that. What to do is, because after this, if you've connected to this, which you have, you'll get an email from Jed, and it'll have my email address. And if you send me the links or send it to Jed, he'll distribute that. But yeah, I'd heard about Cracked Up. I've not seen it. I will watch it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks a million.
Everybody's email address.
I think Ruth was wanting to ask a question.
That package, that pack, and send that out to everybody. We're coming to the end of our time together. I'll thank just a few observations as well, just on the topics that's going on. Early intervention is crucial. It's what Scotland focuses on. It's why the numbers in enrolment are half. It's why a lot of resources are spent in early intervention. You talked about it, just because you're 21 going to the adult prison system, there is a gap there which needs to be picked up by Aid and Abet, Cisco, unfunded organisations with put forward funding. I'll give you an example here. Natalie today had to rush back because somebody who's been attending a recovery cafe and doing great. My experience of that is often when we get people in confinement to do the best that they've ever done in their life, often their drug misuse is limited, or less, not all the time, but it is less. 3 square meals a day. They have a stable environment where they're staying at night. Sometimes people go into the gym, see people go to education, and they do quite well. The challenge is when they come back out, we know that they go back into their own environment, and then they go back into their own environment and experience the same triggers, and their coping strategies are pretty much the same, which is often substance abuse and criminality. And here's Natalie today has went and picked somebody up to the recovery cafe who immediately leaves prison, becomes homeless, goes into St Enoch Hotel, which isn't the best environment for them all, ends up chronic drug misuse. Their only access is to phone an unfunded charity like Natalie, who Gary, another guy who's just left the project, become a mentor, goes and buys on the phone with his own money some basic supplies and gets that refunded from Natalie, and Natalie relies entirely on contributions and donations from members of the public to run a service. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous when we think about the amount of money that's spent on various other resources. So there's one example. Listen, we could go through a number of examples. If we're looking for early intervention, the great way of doing that, in my view, is we know through neuroscience that people learn through repetition. And we know that the best way to cement a habit, habituation, is through a repeated working process. So here's the thing, there is not one formula. So it's not just mindfulness that's going to change somebody's life. It's not just going to be EFT tapping or havening or some other form of self-help, but one of them, and being exposed to repeated self-care processes that downgrade your stress response. That means you get full frontal lobe activation and you can think much better and have emotional regulation is crucial. The challenge is that a lot of frontline workers are stressed out themselves. Absolutely stressed out with vicarious trauma, there's no doubt about that. We just need to look at the childcare system. You look at the prison system, they know the number of absences. So they're stressed out themselves. We've got stressed out, haggard workers, frontline workers who are trying to be the frontline barrier to what's clearly a massive challenge for young people. So there's a big dynamic, and I think self-care is crucially important for everybody, and there's not just one form of it. There's loads of it. So that's my tuppence worth there. Can I, just before we put it back to you for some closing comments, Iain, is just thank everybody for coming. We have a series of talks coming up. They will look likely to be live, but they will be posted on social media, predominantly YouTube. On Tuesday, we have Graham Armstrong, who's the author of The Young Team. He's coming to do a talk. On Thursday, we've got Angela Trainer from the Harvest Clinic, who's a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and to be quite honest with you, one of the biggest motivations that I've ever come across when I get into therapy myself. Got Lindsay Hurst, which is the Chief Operating Officer of Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's an international trainer. She's going to come on the 4th of June. Laura Hoff, i.e. from the Inner Fire, Wim Hof's daughter, and all the work she's going to come and talk live from Amsterdam about some of the stuff that they're doing. She's not cemented a date yet, but she's keen to do it. So some really good people got to come on. We're looking at other people at Callum's suggested to us around about AC, Smart Justice, stuff like that. So if you don't mind, I will put your email address because you've booked through Eventbrite, and I will send you emails letting you know what's available. If you really don't want to take part in that, just let us know and I'll take you off the email list. So can I just come back to you for some closing, Iain, and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. I don't have any fancy speech to say at the end, but just thank you very much for letting me speak, Jed, and for everyone that's attended the Zoom chat. It was hopefully once I got going, it was a meaningful and sort of slightly revealing in terms of what I do, because as I say, slightly unusual, and hopefully will become by next year a normal thing to hear lawyers talking about adverse childhood experiences, and talking about love and kindness and care and hope for people and persevering with them, and things that sound a bit odd in court at the moment. So I guess when you're talking this sort of path, you're on your own, it's quite lonely, but I think there's been an increase in it. And for the fact all you guys asking very relevant questions and recognising it. And thanks for a lot of the people that I know who've come along, who I love to hear from, rather than just hearing my voice. And it's a shame you didn't get to hear more from them. As I say, Joe Berry speaking on next week with the Violence Reduction Unit, and Graham as well, and other talks for Jed, and just stay up with them. Anyone, I've posted my email address. If you have any questions that you didn't get a chance, or you're a bit shy about asking, just ask. I'll try my best to answer it. And my full details are literally going to be with you. And the other talks I'm sending are hopefully useful and relevant. There's probably a book list if people were interested. People asked me who it was I went to Kilmarnock with. It was Tina Henry, and they were asking about resilience. Who made that? It was actually Robert Redford's son, James Redford. It made the film Resilience, and he's made other brilliant films, one called Paper Tigers, which is a blueprint for educators about trauma, and another one to do with dyslexia called The Big Picture. So he's a brilliant filmmaker, great films there. So I like learning about things through media and film rather than through books. It took me about 2 months to read Gabor Mate's amazing book, In the Realms of Hungry Ghosts. But if you're a good reader and you like reading, these are the pages that will resonate and will fly out at you and make you realise about the science and the understanding, and some of the words and the way he says things are just incredible. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me and hanging in with me. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll just